Mil tried to crash our anniversary dinner by booking a table next to us. She said, "It's a family celebration." I switched restaurants at the last minute and left her there alone. Story 1. My wife, Tilda, and I have been married for 10 years. Our marriage isn't perfect, no one's is, but we've built a strong relationship through patience, communication, and setting boundaries. A lot of those boundaries revolve around one person, my mother-in-law, Letitia. She's a lot. And that's putting it mildly. Letitia has this way of making everything about her. She doesn't believe in privacy or independence. To her, family is about togetherness, but what she really means is control. Over the years, she's barged into our house uninvited, rewritten plans to suit her, and stirred up drama for no reason other than boredom. It's exhausting. But what happened on our 10th anniversary took the cake. It wasn't just a boundary stomp. It was a full-blown attempt to hijack one of the most special nights of our lives. It started about a week before our anniversary. Tilda had casually mentioned to her mom during a phone call that I'd made a reservation at Bella Vista, the fanciest restaurant in Kalamazoo. It was supposed to be a surprise for Tilda, but she hates surprises, so I caved and told her a few weeks in advance. She was thrilled. Bella Vista is one of those places where you go to celebrate the big stuff, anniversaries, promotions, engagements. Not the kind of place you go just because. Tilda told Letitia about it because, in her words, she didn't think it was a big deal. I should have known better. Letitia doesn't do not a big deal. Every time she hears about something that doesn't include her, she suddenly thinks it does include her. "Oh, Bella Vista?" Letitia had said. "That's such a lovely spot. You two deserve a special night. Are you sure it's just the two of you? 10 years is a big milestone. It should be a family celebration." That's how she framed it. Like she was doing us a favor by suggesting she, and, by extension, the entire family, join us. Tilda laughed it off and told her no, but I knew the seed had been planted. Letitia doesn't hear no. She hears not yet. A few days went by, and I didn't think much of it. I figured maybe, just maybe, she'd let this one go. Then, the night before our anniversary, Tilda got a text. It was from Letitia, and it was just a single line. "Can't wait to celebrate with you tomorrow at Bella Vista. I booked a table right next to yours." Tilda called me immediately. I could hear the mix of anger and disbelief in her voice as she read the message aloud. "Next to ours?" I repeated, trying to wrap my head around it. "She actually booked a table?" "She sent me the screenshot," Tilda said. "She's serious. She made the reservation." Now, I'm not a guy who gets angry easily. I work as an HVAC tech, and you learn to roll with the punches when you're sweating your ass off in someone's attic. But this lit a fire in me. "She's not doing this," I said. "This is our anniversary. Not hers." "What do we do?" Tilda asked. I thought about it for a moment. Letitia wanted to ruin our night? Fine. Let her show up to Bella Vista, dressed to the nines, expecting to join us. We just wouldn't be there. The plan was simple. I called Bella Vista that night and canceled our reservation. Then, I booked us a table at the Copper Vine, another upscale spot on the other side of town. It wasn't Italian, but it had great food and a cozy vibe. I even asked for a private booth so we wouldn't have to worry about anyone, especially Letitia, finding us. The next day, Tilda and I got dressed up and headed out. She looked stunning in a dark green dress, and I did my best in a suit and tie. It felt good to get out together, just the two of us. The drive to the Copper Vine was quiet but excited. We both knew what was about to go down. Meanwhile, Letitia was undoubtedly getting ready, probably giddy with the thought of surprising us at Bella Vista. She likely thought she'd play the "oh, I didn't know this was just for you too" card before sliding into our dinner like it was her right. We got to the Copper Vine and were seated immediately. The staff was amazing, attentive but not hovering. We ordered a bottle of wine, shared an appetizer, and just enjoyed each other's company. It felt like we were dating again, back before life got complicated with mortgages and family drama. I made a point not to check my phone. I knew Letitia would be blowing it up, but I didn't care. Tonight was about Tilda and me. Sure enough, about an hour into dinner, Tilda's phone buzzed on the table. She glanced at it, sighed, and turned it face down. "Let me guess," I said. "She's at Bella Vista," Tilda said, trying not to laugh. "She says she's been waiting for half an hour and wants to know where we are." By the time we got to dessert, the messages had escalated. Letitia had gone from confused to angry. Apparently, she'd told the staff at Bella Vista she was there for a special family dinner and was getting impatient. She even called Tilda a few times, but Tilda silenced her phone. "Do you think she ordered food?" Tilda asked, smirking. "Oh, absolutely," I said. "She wouldn't dare sit there without ordering something. She's too proud." When we finally got home, my phone had about 20 missed calls and twice as many texts. Letitia's messages ranged from furious to guilt-trippy, with a few passive-aggressive jabs for good measure. Where are you? This is so disrespectful. After everything I've done for you too, this is how you treat me? The cherry on top was, do you know how expensive this place is? I had to order a full meal just to stay at the table. Letitia's meltdown continued for days after. She ranted to anyone who would listen, twisting the story to make it seem like we were the ones in the wrong. But honestly, I didn't care. For once, Tilda and I had stood our ground. We'd refused to let her manipulate us, and it felt amazing. When Letitia realized she wasn't going to get a response that night, she didn't take it well. The next morning, she unleashed a barrage of texts and calls. This time, she wasn't just mad, she was painting herself as the ultimate victim. Do you know how embarrassing it was to sit there alone? I hope you're happy. I've never been so humiliated in my life. Your father would have been so disappointed in you for treating me this way. For context, Letitia's husband passed away years ago, and she uses his memory to guilt Tilda constantly. Tilda showed me the messages over coffee, and we just shook our heads. This wasn't new behavior for Letitia, but it was the first time we deliberately outsmarted her, and the results were satisfying. Still, we knew she wouldn't drop it without some sort of escalation. That's just who she was. Letitia didn't waste time trying to get back at us. She decided that if she couldn't ruin our anniversary night, she'd ruin the weeks afterward. She started by calling Tilda's siblings, Marvin and Elise, and spinning the story. They abandoned me at a fancy restaurant, she cried to them. I just wanted to celebrate their anniversary as a family, and they humiliated me. Now, Marvin and Elise both know how Letitia operates. They've dealt with her guilt trips for years. Marvin mostly avoids her drama, but Elise still gets sucked in sometimes. Sure enough, Elise called Tilda a few days later. Mom is really upset, Elise said, clearly uncomfortable. I know she can be over the top, but don't you think you could have handled it differently? Tilda, bless her heart, didn't take the bait. Elise, she said, we told her this was a private dinner. She booked a table without asking us and tried to hijack the night. She embarrassed herself. Not us. Elise mumbled something about seeing both sides, but by the end of the call, even she admitted Letitia was out of line. Meanwhile, Letitia upped the ante. She posted a long-winded Facebook rant about disrespectful children and how some people forget who raised them. She didn't name us outright, but it was obvious who she was talking about. Her friends chimed in with comments like, "Oh, sweetie, you deserve better. And they'll regret it one day." It was peak Letitia. After a week of her antics, I was over it. Tilda and I had spent years tiptoeing around Letitia's feelings, but this time, I wanted her to understand we weren't going to tolerate her behavior anymore. So, I came up with a plan to make sure she got the message loud and clear. I decided to write her a letter. Not a nasty one, but one that laid everything out in plain terms. I wanted her to know exactly why we did what we did, and what would happen if she kept pushing our boundaries. Here's what I wrote. Letitia. Tilda and I love you, but your actions on our anniversary were unacceptable. We told you clearly that this was a private dinner for just the two of us, yet you decided to insert yourself anyway. You made a reservation without asking us, and when we changed our plans, you blamed us for embarrassing you. Let me be clear, this kind of behavior is why we've had to set boundaries with you in the past. You've consistently ignored our wishes and tried to make everything about you. That stops now. If you want a relationship with us, you need to respect our boundaries. That means no more surprise visits, no more inserting yourself into our plans, and no more guilt trips when things don't go your way. We want you in our lives, but only if you can respect the space we need as a couple. The choice is yours. Orville. Tilda read the letter before I sent it and agreed it was perfect. Firm but fair. I printed it out, mailed it, and waited. It took about 3 days for the letter to arrive. When it did, Letitia called Tilda immediately. I could hear the conversation from the other room, and it was something. At first, Letitia was defensive. I don't understand why you're so angry, she said. I was just trying to be supportive. But Tilda didn't budge. Mom, you need to stop pretending this is about us. It's about you not getting your way. If you can't respect our boundaries, we can't have a normal relationship. There was a long silence. Then Letitia did something I didn't expect. She apologized. I didn't mean to upset you, she said quietly. I don't like feeling left out. It wasn't a perfect apology. Letitia's pride wouldn't let her admit she was completely wrong, but it was a start. For the first time, it felt like she understood we weren't going to keep putting up with her behavior. In the months that followed, Letitia actually started backing off. She still had her moments, passive-aggressive comments here and there, but she stopped trying to control our lives. It was like the letter had flipped a switch for her. Maybe she realized we were serious. Maybe she just got tired of fighting us. Either way, our relationship with her improved. Tilda and I even started inviting her to small family dinners, on our terms. And whenever she started to overstep, we'd gently remind her of the letter. It wasn't perfect, but it was progress. As for our anniversary night, It's still one of my favorite memories. Not just because of the amazing dinner, but because it marked a turning point in our lives. We stopped letting Letitia dictate how we lived and started putting our marriage first. Revenge doesn't always have to be loud or dramatic. Sometimes, the best revenge is simply taking control of your own happiness, and watching the person who tried to ruin it realize they've lost. And that's how we left my mother-in-law sitting alone at a fancy restaurant, wondering why her guilt trips didn't work this time. Story 2. I'm Malachi, a 34-year-old factory worker from Cypress Grove, Pennsylvania. It's a quiet town with not much going on, but it's home. My pride and joy, aside from my modest apartment, was my 2018 Toyota Camry. I know, it's not a luxury car or anything, but I poured years of sweat and overtime into getting it. Reliable, smooth, good on gas, it was everything I needed for my 40-minute commute to work and then some. Now, let's talk about my sister, Serafina. Yeah, I know her name sounds like something out of a fantasy novel, but trust me, there's nothing magical about her. Serafina is the kind of person who sucks the air out of every room she walks into. She's 28, but you'd swear she's a teenager with the way she carries herself. She's been bouncing between jobs, apartments, and side hustles since she graduated high school. Not that she ever stays at anything long enough to make it work. She's the queen of excuses, constantly blaming everyone else for her mistakes. And worst of all, my parents enable her. I can't even count the number of times they've bailed her out of bad situations, covering rent, buying her groceries, or even giving her gas money for a car she didn't even have anymore. I've pitched in more than I should have too. Call me soft-hearted or stupid, but I figured, hey, she's my sister. Family is supposed to help each other out. Big mistake. One Friday morning, I was finally catching up on some sleep after a brutal week of night shifts. I work at a steel plant, and if you've ever done that kind of work, you know it's no joke. Around 7 a.m., I woke up to loud banging on my apartment door. At first, I thought it might be a neighbor or something, but no, it was Serafina. Malachi. Open up. It's important, she shouted, pounding like her life depended on it. Groggy and half annoyed, I stumbled to the door and opened it. There she was, dressed in her usual mismatched thrift store outfit, looking like she hadn't slept in days. Serafina, what the hell? It's 7 in the morning. Can't this wait? I asked, rubbing my eyes. No, it can't, she said, pushing past me into the apartment. I have a job interview, and I need to borrow your car. That woke me up real fast. What? No. Absolutely not. You don't even have a license. But Malachi, she whined, dragging out my name like a child. If I don't go, I'll lose this opportunity, and then mom and dad will have to keep covering for me. Don't you want me to get a job? I should have slammed the door right then and there, but instead, I hesitated. She had this way of twisting things to make me feel guilty. It wasn't just her words, it was the way she looked at me, all wide-eyed and desperate, like I was her last hope. Against my better judgment, I sighed and grabbed my keys. Fine. But listen to me, Serafina, I said, handing them over. Be careful. If anything happens to this car. Nothing will happen. I promise. She cut me off, grinning like she'd just won the lottery. Before I could change my mind, she was out the door. 3 hours later, I woke up to a missed call and 3 text messages. They were all from Serafina, and none of them were good. Hey, Malachi. Call me. Something happened. Don't freak out, okay? My stomach sank. I called her back immediately. What happened, Serafina? I asked, dreading the answer. So. There was an accident, she said hesitantly. What kind of accident? I demanded, my voice rising. I kind of totaled your car, she admitted. Then, before I could say anything, she quickly added, but it wasn't my fault. This other car cut me off, and I swerved, and... You don't even have a license, I shouted, cutting her off. Do you have any idea what you've done? My insurance won't cover this. Do you know how much this is going to cost me? You've got insurance, right? Just file a claim or whatever, she said, her tone dismissive. It doesn't work like that, I yelled. The insurance won't pay because you were driving without a license. Her response? Well, maybe you should have had better insurance. I hung up. I couldn't believe what I'd just heard. My car, my pride and joy, was gone because of her stupidity, and now she was trying to blame me for it? My blood was boiling. I drove to the tow yard to see the damage for myself. The sight of my car broke me. The front end was completely smashed in, the windshield was shattered, and the airbags had deployed. It was beyond repair. I felt sick to my stomach. The tow yard manager handed me the bill, $700 for the tow and storage fees. On top of that, the estimated cost to fix the car was over $12,000. My insurance company wouldn't cover a dime because, as I suspected, Serafina didn't have a license. I was screwed. When I got home, I confronted her. She was sitting in our parents' living room, scrolling through her phone like nothing had happened. Serafina, I started, barely keeping my anger in check. You're paying for the damages. Every single cent. She laughed. She actually laughed. With what money, Malachi? I don't have a job, remember? You'll just have to figure it out. I stared at her in disbelief. You're unbelievable. You wrecked my car, and you don't even care. It's just a car, she said with a shrug. Why are you being so dramatic? I turned to my parents, hoping they'd back me up. But they just looked uncomfortable, like they didn't want to get involved. Malachi, she didn't mean to crash the car, my dad said. It was an accident. An accident that could have killed someone. I shot back. She shouldn't have been driving in the first place. She's your sister, my mom added. We don't call the cops on family. But that's exactly what I was thinking about doing. And the more I thought about it, the more I realized it might be my only option. That night, I couldn't sleep. My parents' words kept echoing in my head, we don't call the cops on family. But was Serafina really family in the way that mattered? She had taken advantage of me time and time again, and this was the final straw. She had no remorse, no shame, and no intention of making things right. If my parents wouldn't hold her accountable, I would. The next morning, I got up early and went straight to the police station. I explained everything to the officer at the desk, how my sister had taken my car without proper permission, crashed it, and had been driving without a license. I handed over all the proof, the tow yard receipt, the insurance denial, and even text messages from her admitting to the crash. The officer nodded, took down the details, and said they'd handle it. I felt a pang of guilt as I walked out of the station, but it didn't last long. Serafina needed to face the consequences of her actions, even if it meant burning bridges. A few days later, Serafina called me in a panic. Malachi. What the hell did you do? The cops just showed up at mom and dad's house with a summons. Are you serious right now? Yes, I'm serious, I replied coldly. You totaled my car. You were driving illegally. You're lucky no one got hurt. This is on you. You're such an asshole. We're family. You don't do this to family. She screamed. Family doesn't steal from each other and then laugh about it, I said before hanging up. My parents were furious. My mom called me that night and went on a long rant about how I was tearing the family apart. How could you do this to your sister? She demanded. I didn't do anything to her, I said. She did this to herself. Maybe if you and dad had held her accountable years ago, she wouldn't be in this mess. That shut her up. Court day arrived, and I'll admit I was nervous. Serafina showed up with my parents in tow, her face a mix of anger and fake sadness. She tried to play the victim, telling the judge how she'd only taken the car to go to a job interview and how she didn't mean for any of this to happen. She even threw in some crocodile tears for good measure. But the judge wasn't buying it. He looked over the evidence and didn't hold back. You were driving without a license, Miss Serafina. That's a serious offense. You put yourself and others in danger, and you caused significant financial harm to your brother. She was found guilty of driving without a license and reckless endangerment. The judge fined her $3,500 and ordered her to pay restitution for the full cost of my car. My parents tried to plead with the judge, saying she didn't have the money to pay, but he was firm. That's not Mr. Malachi's problem, he said. She'll pay it back, even if it takes years. For the next 2 years, Serafina's life was a nightmare. Her wages were garnished from the part-time retail job she finally had to keep. Every paycheck, a big chunk went straight to me. She complained about it constantly, calling me every name in the book, but I didn't care. I used the money to pay off the loan I had to take out to replace my car. Meanwhile, my relationship with my parents cooled significantly. They kept trying to guilt-trip me, saying I'd ruin the family, but I stood my ground. If you want to keep enabling her, that's your choice, I told them. But I'm done. The final payment came 2 years and 3 months later. Serafina sent it via a check, and in the memo line, she wrote, "Hope you're happy, jerk." I cashed it with a smile. As for Serafina, she's still stuck in the same cycle of bad decisions, except now she knows I won't be her safety net. My parents still help her out, but even they've started to pull back after seeing how serious I was about holding her accountable. And me? I've moved on. I bought a new car, a modest Honda Accord this time, and I'm living my life without the constant drama. Serafina doesn't talk to me anymore, but honestly, it's a relief. I don't need people in my life who only know how to take and never give back. Revenge wasn't sweet, it was necessary. And if I had to do it all over again, I wouldn't change a thing.